All right, here we are back with another coffee call on this beautiful Friday, and it is the first day of the Deer Classic, and you're going to be a busy man today.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah, you've got a full weekend ahead of you.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's no joke. I've had a busy week already. Just we built a new booth this year for Midwest Whitetail, and I've been working on that for the last 3 days and framed the whole thing out. It's really nice. It's all framed up with 2x4s, and it's got tongue and groove cedar on it. Got a few of the mounts this year from some of the guys that have shot deer this season. We've already got the mounts back, and got a really sweet like CNC cut piece of sheet metal with our logo on it that I backlit with LED lights, and I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't proud of it because it looks awesome.
Well, when you text me some pictures, I was like, "Damn, that looks freaking good!" It came out awesome.
I don't know. I had fun with it, and I'm gonna feel good to sit in front of it. I'll tell you that much. So
there you go. Feel proud.
Why not?
Well, today I figured on the coffee call we could talk about calling whitetails, and
All right.
kind of what brought this up is this week I was editing a Rival Wild show, and I was editing footage from Chris and Casey, and it was during the rut, some hunts during the rut, and and they were doing some blind rattling and some blind calling and calling when we see deer and everything, and it kind of got the gears turning. And I was talking to Adam, at work, and I was like, we were talking about just calling and how deer react differently to them, when to call, like when do you call? And calling in Iowa is a lot different than calling in Michigan. So I thought it'd be a cool one. When I threw it out to you, you're like, hell yeah, let's do this, man. This is a great topic.
Yeah.
And I say we take it and just kind of run with it and just, talk about your and I's experiences calling in different states and how deer have reacted differently, just from our experiences and our opinion, really.
Yeah, that's a great way to do this. First thing that comes to my mind is like I'm going to simplify this like one step further. I'm going to list like one through 5, like top of my list, like best places that give the best results to calling, all the way down to like don't waste your time. And this is just my opinion, and we'll dive into the reasons why like after we kind of get this out. But obviously Texas, like that's the first thing. You talk about rattling. You've seen it a million times. Like it always works in Texas. I don't care who you are. You can go hit 2 soda cans together, and you're probably gonna call in a deer.
Yeah.
And from there, man, I've only been in Iowa for a year, but I would say Iowa, Ohio, Kansas, Illinois. I mean, I hate to list off those stereotypical success states, but
yeah, but I get that. Like that's like your kind of, if you're putting them in tiers, like that's kind of like your upper second tier, possibly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. And then as you get towards the bottom third of that list, I would probably say like I'm going to jump down to the ones that I wouldn't waste my time in, and that's New York.
Yep.
That's New York. I would probably say some of those western states like Montana and Wyoming. Like there's a lot of numbers there, but I just feel like there's not enough competition for it to be very effective.
Yeah, I agree. And if I was talking in my kind of tiers, like like you said, the best place to call, it is like Texas is up there. I've been to Texas quite a bit, and it is no joke. You could take, like you said, 2 pop cans or 2 rocks off the ground and hit them together, and you're going to have every buck around you just like come in hot. And then if I had to come down just a little bit, I mean, it doesn't mean these are any worse states to call in or not, but they're really good still. Kansas is highly on the list, just because I've spent a lot of time in Kansas and seen it work in Kansas a lot. And then I'm going to go to Illinois. Illinois is really high on the list because just in my experiences, it works really well. Blind calling, rattling, I mean, all of the above. Iowa's right there, and then kind of my lower end tier. First of all, I don't ever take antlers into the woods in Michigan, and I probably would never take them into the woods in New York and PA and stuff like that. But that's kind of how my tier falls down too. And Wisconsin, Minnesota, they kind of fall just above that Michigan to the second tier kind of states, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So and to kind of go back to what sprung this idea was I was watching this footage that I was editing, and it kind of made me think, like, over the years, the last 6 or 7 hunting seasons, whether I've been hunting and rattling or if, Casey's been doing it, blind rattling, let's start there. Blind rattling. How many times has it ever worked where you had a mature deer run into you like right away, or within, a few seconds or 30 seconds or something?
I don't know. The answer is very small. Like not
Very
very
small.
often. Not very many.
Yes.
Is the answer. But for me, it happened this year, and it happens to actually be the very first deer I've ever killed that I rattled in. As you saw the footage, and it's like I didn't even know the deer was in frame. Like he was right there 100 yards away. I didn't even know it. So I call that just a fluke, because had I seen that deer, would I have rattled at him regardless? I don't know. But I just went at it, and I didn't even know he was already there. But it got his attention, and he came charging in. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like it's a low probability of it happening. Now, we've had a lot of instances where just like little bucks will run in like crazy, trying to pick up the scraps of that fight. Who's going to come out limping? Who do I get a piece of,
Yeah.
But as far as the mature deer, the 4.5, 5.5, 6.5-year-old deer, it doesn't happen all the time. The last 6 or 7 years, I haven't got to hunt the rut a lot in states where I can take rattling antlers. You know what I mean? So the one time I did in Missouri, first morning I've ever blind rattled ever, I rattled a buck in at 32 yards and killed him. And it was unbelievable. So me personally, rattling bucks in, I'm 100%. So I'm one for one. But in the grand scheme of things, if I throw Casey into that mix, like I'm with him as well, it's very low, but it has happened.
Right.
This year I had an instance in Michigan, and I do blind call here in Michigan, but I have a sequence that I do. I'm a firm believer in like a can call, like a Primos can call. I love that thing. I don't go in the woods without it. And my reason for it is because I'm not going to intimidate any buck doing a bleat, like a doe bleat. So I don't feel like it can hurt you. Don't get me wrong, but I just think the probability of it hurting you is not very high. So I take that, and then I take a grunt call, like a Primos grunt call. I've got the same ones, same 2 calls I've had for a long time. I mean, like 8 or 10 years. I still have the same ones. So this year, in Michigan here, I had a buck, a 3.5-year-old buck, come out into the field, into the beans, and it was November 10th. And he was a shooter buck that I had on camera. I needed to get his attention, and I had a decoy out. I've said this on the podcast before. I bleated at him a couple times. Bleated. He'd look in my direction, but then he put his head down. So then I made him know that something was there. So then when he put his head down for the last time, I said, well, I'm going to throw a grunt at him, and I turned my grunt tube away. I never grunt at a deer when I can see them. I just feel like it's like you got a megaphone up there, and you're like, hey, I'm over here. You want it to be like, okay, you heard it. I got to come over there and investigate. So I just hit him with a couple soft grunts. He looked in my direction, and on a rope, he came right at me. And I also see, in my opinion, a lot of people, even with rattling antlers or a grunt call, whatever it is, if there's a buck looking in your direction, they still call. In my opinion, that's kind of not the right way to do it, because, like I said, it's like you with a blowhorn up there just yelling like, hey, I'm over here in a tree 20 feet up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would just kind of advise against that. But same way here in Michigan, when I do a blind call, I'll go in there and I'll do a couple bleats, 3 bleats, and then I'll do a couple soft contact grunts like a buck's kind of nudging a doe around in the woods. And I've had so many bucks come into that like blind here in Michigan, like good shooter bucks. And that's kind of the philosophy I take here in Michigan. I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, in my opinion, if I can see a deer and I can read its body language, I can see, like, I don't want to say with a doe, because there's not much you can do to get a buck to come off of a doe. It's like trying to call in a turkey with 25 hens. Not going to happen. But if I can see a buck that's making a scrape or just cruising or kind of scent check in, or if I can read his body language, that's going to tell me how to call to him and what to do to get him in range. I wouldn't be afraid to call to a deer that I could see, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's only because I'm confident enough in knowing what he's doing and how to make him respond to me the way I want. That's just me. But I'm not afraid to blind call either. And with that, again, I'm unlike you. I don't even own a bleat can. Everything I do, I try to focus on buck vocalizations. So either rattling, which isn't really a vocalization, but the audio of antlers, the rattling, and buck grunts. I've had just as much success grunting in mature bucks by sounding like a young deer, a young buck, as I have challenging a mature buck by trying to make myself sound, more mature than he is, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
I also know guys who refuse to blind call. I'm not going to lie, there's a part of me that does it sometimes because I've been sitting there for 2 hours and I've only seen cardinals, chickadees, and red squirrels, and I'm bored. I want to make some noise. I feel like it's a reset button. I feel like it's a reset button.
I'm the same way, like the same feeling. Like I don't go into every set just blind calling either. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, because I'm the same way you are. Like I would just rather have it happen naturally,
Yeah.
but it's like you get to that point, like you said, you've just been watching birds all night and it gets to prime time and you're like, oh man, it's chilly tonight. It's like prime time. Let's wake up the woods a little bit. Like I get that feeling, and then that's when I'll do it.
Yeah, and you're sitting there telling yourself, like, I've already been sitting here for 2 hours or 3 hours, like, everything has calmed down. I might as well not even be here. So I'm going to make a noise that sounds like an animal that is here. The deer you're trying to kill, obviously, but I don't know. It gives me that confidence, like, where I start paying attention again. Like, if I lose focus, it's like, just throw out a couple grunts, I'm not saying, like, go all crazy, like, smashing your fist, rattling your brains out and just making all kinds of a ruckus, but like just a couple soft grunts, some contact grunts or bleats, whatever you got, just break the silence and
break the monotony a little
and see what happens. Like you never know, like how close a deer could be that you don't even know is there.
Yeah, and when I really think about it too, the blind calling that I've done over the years, I have called some pretty decent deer in, and to within bow range, but that is a low probability of it happening. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yep.
So that's why I just don't do it all the time. But like you said, and I kind of reiterated there, is like it's when you're bored kind of, and you're like, let's light the woods up a little bit, see what's out there. So that's kind of when I jump into it. But I have heard of guys, here in Michigan, they'll take rattling antlers with them in the stand like in early October, and what they'll do is they'll take the tips of the tines and they'll just tinkle them, just tink 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 tink, and just it sounds like two little bucks kind of just messing around in a little food plot or something. You get those trail cam pictures, these little bucks just kind of touching the tips of their tines and everything, and a lot of people say that has worked for them. I don't know what the success rate is at that, but I thought it was kind of interesting that they'll do that. I don't have big enough balls to go and do that, to be honest with you. I just feel like I like getting in the stand, being quiet, and just like, let's let it happen.
Yeah, and and hearing you say that makes me kind of revert back to the beginning of this conversation where I mentioned density, like in reference to like Wyoming and Montana. Like there's a lot of deer per square mile in those states where the deer actually exist, like along the rivers, and there's places where whitetails don't exist in Montana, obviously, but in the places that they are, it's still an option for you to call to them. And the success of that calling is going to, in my opinion, be very heavily dependent upon the density. And not only the density, but your buck-to-doe ratios. So like in your case, in Michigan, it's like you may have a solid deer density, but your buck-to-doe ratio is to the point where a buck may not feel very threatened or challenged by another buck because he knows he doesn't need to pick that fight or acknowledge, the offer to fight, because he can turn around, walk away, and go find 5 more does if he wants to by the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yep. As opposed to like Texas, where I don't even know what the deer numbers are per square mile, but it's a freaking lot. And the chances are the chances are that one buck is probably going to run into out of the next 20 deer encounters, 5 or 6 of those might be more bucks. So it's like, if I hear someone challenging me, or if I hear something going on that sounds like some kind of breeding, vocalization, or, a fight for those breeding rights, then I better put my 2 cents in. I'm gonna get in on that.
Right.
And it's just one of those things where it's not so much the sheer number of deer, but the number does have to do with what your ratio is. So it's, take those things into consideration. And, maybe that's why you don't have very much success. Like, you can look out your back window and there's 40 deer at your bird feeder, but how many of those deer are actually bucks?
Right.
Right now, you might not know if you can't identify because they're not holding antlers, but that's the difference, in my opinion.
I agree, man. And, that's something I keep track of during the year. I write, I have a journal, and every night when I see adult does, I write how many adult does I saw, and then how many bucks that I saw. So I can kind of get a close number to where, or a good idea, at least in the ballpark, to where, I think my numbers are. And this year, on the main farm, we talked about it, my numbers are pretty darn close from what, from my buck to doe ratio, and like I said, you go to my family farm 15 minutes away, they're way the hell off. Like, we need to kill some does. So, it's something to, it's kind of fun to take note of too. Just, pull out your notepad on your phone too, and just write a little note in, hey, I saw 6 adult does tonight. Don't count the fawns and the yearlings, but count the adult does and the bucks. And it's kind of crazy when you add them up at the end of the year or whenever to see what your ratio is. I saw 75 adult does this year. Some of those probably are the same does, but at least you kind of know. And then you saw, 18 different bucks. Well, what your ratio is kind of where your numbers are at.
Yeah, and I think if you're hunting private land, that's obviously something that, you're going to want to always monitor that, to the best of your ability, whether it's based on trail cam pictures or personal observations from your stand, or, the number of sheds you find, or if you can identify buck beds versus doe beds. It's one of those things to keep in mind. And again, like when it comes to those numbers, the more numbers you have, the harder time you're going to have in identifying, is it a buck bed or a doe bed? Or, if the antlers are off, is that a buck or is that a doe? So just the more information you can get in the time frame that it's available, the more effective you're going to be, as a hunter, number one. But number two, you're going to know how to communicate when you decide you want to call.
Exactly. And you made a good point too earlier on in this podcast where you had talked about being able to read a deer and, read what his mannerisms are and how he's acting. Like, that's huge. Like, I just like going out and watching deer, any time of the year, whether it be, the summer, the fall, whatever, the winter, late season. I like going out and watching deer and reading them and like just learning more about how they act and how they interact around each other. And that's, it'll make you a better hunter as well, because the next move what this deer is going to do, or this year when I had that encounter with that deer in Michigan, he came out, he just got out of his bed, came out in the bean field, and he was eating beans. Well, I'd hit a bleat and he'd look up my way, but then he'd put his head down. He's like, I was reading him. I was like, okay, what do you got? What do you need here? He couldn't see my decoy. So I'm like, well, I'm going to hit him with another bleat. When he put his head down, I hit him with another, and he looked up and he kind of took a step towards me, and he's like, okay, something's different over there. Then when he put his head down for the last time, I hit him with that soft grunt, and then that was the reassurance he needed, like, okay, there's a buck with a hot doe over there. He felt like he was the alpha, I would think, in that scenario, because I'm not going to lie, he made about 250 yards in a matter of like 4 seconds. He was there.
Yeah.
He needed to get over there and see what the hell was going on.
Like I mentioned earlier, like I've had just as much success sounding like a young deer as I do when I sound like an old deer, and that's a perfect example of that, because if it is the dominant deer like on your property, or if he's already kicked everybody's ass, he's going to respond to anything. Like, he knows he's top dog out there, so he's going to accept every challenge that comes his way. He's not going to turn anything down. So
exactly,
and that's the deer you want. Like, that's a mature deer, like in his prime. You couldn't ask for, like, if you are targeting a mature deer, and that's your idea of your target animal, he's going to respond to anything as far as a challenge, like a male vocalization.
Right. And this deer, he was the upper echelon of the deer in my area. I know he was at least 3.5. He wasn't wearing a birth certificate, so I couldn't really tell if he was 4.5. He didn't scream 4.5, but I do know he was a 3.5-year-old deer. But he was 125-inch 8-pointer, 3.5-year-old deer. But he is the top 10% of the bucks in my area. He knew something was over there, and he was probably the bigger deer and had to go over and investigate. So that was just that reassurance, and as the hunt unfolded, he came in at 35 yards, and I was trying to film myself. It was a big debacle. I mean, it's whatever, and it's over now. So I didn't get a shot at him, but like afterwards, I wanted to be really upset about the whole situation, but then I had to get the positive out of it and say, well, no, I called that deer in. Like what I was doing worked. And it worked to a T. Now, if I wasn't fiddle screwing around with a camera and trying to get him on camera, I would have got an arrow off, So
Yeah.
it did work. It was just, a learning experience, and you and I talk about it all the time. Screwing up will, makes you a stronger hunter or stronger person in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I think out of this conversation, the biggest thing anybody can take away is probably that density factor. I mean, no one from Texas is going to deny that rattling is awesome. And nobody from Michigan, New York, or Pennsylvania is going to deny that they're not going to waste their time doing it.
Right. Yep.
Within that density, you've got to have an understanding of your ratio, because that's going to determine the effectiveness of it. But again, the overall density is going to give you an idea of what that ratio should be. So it's one hand washing the other, so to speak.
Well, cool, man. Let's wrap this thing up and call it a day. You got a long weekend ahead of you, and I think it's going to be fun. You're going to be on your feet a lot this weekend, so you better wear your walking shoes.
Yeah, I actually wore them today. I took the boots off today for the setup process, and I already feel relief.
Yep, for sure. Well, cool, man. Let's wrap it up and let's get out of here.
All right, sounds good.
If you guys are in the market for new strings and cables this year, go to americasbestbowstrings.com, customize your new strings and cables, and at checkout, type in Fall Podcast to get $10 off orders $99 and over. So all you got to do is go to americasbestbowstrings.com, like I said, and at checkout, type in Fall Podcast to get $10 off any sets of custom strings that you want from America's Best.